Okay? And you had a question?
Yes, I had asked if the dysfunctional cell was the same as a free radical cell, which I've heard of, that might eventually turn into cancer or some other
Right.
thing that is not a good thing. So
Right,
is that the
and
same
I'm not
thing?
going to use, like I said, I'm not going to use medical terms. That's not what these are about. Traditional medicine that you're talking about has a different nature, but they are dysfunction. That's what dysfunction is. And our entire anatomy is created by the frequencies, individual frequency. Everybody has an individual lifestyle. So their frequencies are going to be different. Not different in the fact that they're frequencies, but your result's going to be different. The way your health is different. The way your health is different because of our lifestyles. So, and what we're born within. We're born within this anatomy of energy when we're conceived. If you don't have that energy field, you cannot be conceived. And that's your DNA. That's what you will become. Now, your sister may have the same energy, the same DNA, but her results are going to be different from yours because of the way you think, because of the way your emotions are. Everything about you is going to be different. So that's how you can live under one roof, and everybody has a different outcome in their physical life when they become older. We have different bottles. I don't know if they can be seen on the camera or not, but we have different bottles because everything is identified through these frequencies, and we need individual frequencies for some results. And our results, for example, for diabetes, we'll take a formula or two, and you might get a result from this today, and she might get a result from this 3 years from now. But there's going to be things in between that you both realize. There's going to be a lot of changes because it's not just one boom, this frequency happened and this is the result. There were things that happened along the way when these dysfunctions began to develop that you didn't even notice. You didn't even feel them until you had that result. But when that result begins to change, then you go, oh, I remember, I felt like that. I know my energy level began to change. I was exhausted. I had so much to deal with. I left out some of the injuries. I had another car accident with another brain injury way down inside where the walnut is. And those are the ones that can create the tumors that you have to have drained, and really severe memory loss. And again, I had back injuries. I had my back fractured, my ribs again were fractured, my hip was fractured. That's the one that the leg was knocked off the foot. They had to reconstruct that. I've got hardware in that side. Once in a while I'll limp because I haven't taken the formula in the morning. And in the beginning I was taking it all day long until I finally realized, geez, that doesn't hurt anymore. You know, I can bend it now, or I can do things with it now that I wasn't able to do before. The scar tissue in my arm has never returned. I took a formula for that. Each one of these formula, this one is called Life Force. Our anatomy, and when we were talking about these cells, every cell is layers and layers and layers of energy frequencies. Layers, hundreds of layers. So when one of these layers become dysfunctional, this one actually will work within that energy and correct these dysfunctions. But it takes time because it's got to do it with this cell, it's got to do it with this cell, it's got to do it within your entire anatomy. So these, and the one called, I didn't bring it, the one called Subtle Negative Energy Remedy is the Negative Energy Remedy formula. And it's called SNRF because that's such a long word. But people laugh because it's in a little blue bottle and it's called SNRF. But it does fabulous work on all of these formula because it maintains that correction within the levels and layers of what the other one does. It also maintains the correction of oral chelation, for example. Oral chelation, these formula have these different names so you can relate to them real easy. I think the scientist that develops these was pretty genius. And he developed the one that will reverse what causes plaque in the blood. It'll reverse scar tissue. Anything having to do with the calcium in your teeth, your eyes, cataracts, whatever, within your anatomy, that's all one frequency. And that's why he developed the oral chelation. And getting to the scientist that developed these, he was in cancer research for 15 years. And this technology is not new. It's been there from the very beginning. The person that developed these, and you'll have to do your own search on this because I can't remember his name. It's been so long since I've even brought this up. This was awarded a Nobel Prize in 1912, or between 1912 and 1916. There was a Nobel Prize for this technology. And that was about the same time that Rockefeller was building his medical schools and his pharmaceutical schools. I think the first one opened in 1913 or something. But that was his buddy. That was Rockefeller's buddy that developed these. And Rockefeller said, I want them. I want to use these. And the guy said, you know, I'm not giving this to you. You're going to give this to the wealthy people, and the wealthy people are the only ones that are going to have access to it, and I want everybody to be able to use this.
When you spoke about this bottle is good for this and this is good for something else, it sounds to me like there could be hundreds of different formulas.
There are. Whatever your result is, there is a formula for that. You may have to combine formula to achieve that complete result, but I do advise, and I've done it, use your natural products for your physical health, because these will make that work better while it's working, correcting the other stuff. So you need to keep your body strong, and these will help your body repair itself and start working the way it should. But if you have, like cancer, I recommend L-arginine. That's a big study recently. L-arginine helps to prevent the cancer or reverse it. Selenium is another product. They have milk thistle, if I'm not mistaken, is used for it. They've got a lot of herbs out here in the Pahrump Wellness Center that are beneficial for anything that's bothering you. So I highly advise that whatever you're using, keep using it, but integrate these to go along with it to get a bigger, faster result. And you will feel them. And it will take time. I mean, even an herb or a vitamin can take up to 6 months before you feel anything. So I advise a person to give these a chance. If you're going to decide to use them, give them a chance.
If you can't really pinpoint whatever ache you have, would you recommend Snurf?
I would recommend the two, Love and Marriage, Life Force and Snurf. Because Life Force is going to be correcting, Snurf is going to be maintaining that. So Life Force and Snurf can work together all the way through this anatomy so that you'll feel a result. And when I first started using these, those are the only two that I had. Those are the only ones I used. They're the ones that I used when I got my memory back. But then I found Oxygen. Oxygen works on a lot of things, but it works on my lungs. You know, I have a lot of lung damage, so I can't breathe when it gets hot. I can't inhale because my lungs won't expand. So I get out of breath a lot in the summer. That's why I don't go to a lot of places in the summer. But I've used the Oxygen formula in my doctor's office.
And that's what it's called, Oxygen.
Oxygen, yep. And I go in to the Oxygen, and they take the little thing on your finger, and it's quite normal for my Oxygen to be from 82 to 86, just walking from the the waiting room into their office. And I'll ask them to give me a couple of minutes, and I'll use the Oxygen under my tongue. I'll spray it under my tongue. It is a spray, it's a water, a special kind of water. It's been, the molecules have been so arranged so that it's the most pure kind of water that it can maintain these frequencies. Regular tap water can't maintain frequencies. It takes a special kind of water to do that. And so they're not just plain water.
Okay.
But I can use that under my tongue, 2 times, and I repeat that 5 times. So within 20 minutes, my oxygen level is back up to 98. And I do that more than once because they want to bring in the big oxygen tank and put me on, pardon me, put me on oxygen. And I tell them, give me 20 minutes and then come back and we'll take it again. And I ask them also to make record of every time I used the formula. Like the time that when I was coughing and the blood came out. The doctor that did that asked me why I wanted cough medicine, and I said, give me a minute. I said, I'm going to cough. And I went over to a sink because I knew what was going to happen. And I mean, blood just whoosh, it was all over the sink. He jumped so high off the ground and started screaming for an ambulance. And I took my 911 that works on trauma, any kind of trauma, and I sprayed my neck topically and under my tongue, and within minutes it stopped. And I said, it's okay now, I'm not bleeding now. I said, it's okay, I just need something to stop me from coughing. But he had to take me over to the hospital. It's a law that if something like that happens, they have to take you by ambulance to get you checked. And when he came into the emergency room, he said, I've never seen anything like that. He said, what did you do? And I showed him. And I asked him, I said, please make this part of the record. And he said, I don't have a problem with that. He said, my best friend is president of the Homeopathic Association, and I want him to know about these. And he said, please, whenever you go to a doctor, let them know that you use these. And I do. They're part of my record. The last doctor that made them part of my record was Dr. Levasseur that worked over at Southwest Medical Clinic. And they had diagnosed me with a really bad thyroid. And so he was going to give me this medication. And I looked it up, and it created so many after effects that were so much worse than a thyroid problem. I said, I can't take this. So I contacted the scientist, told him what was going on, and he made me a thyroid formula. And I started using that. I told Dr. Levasseur, I'm going to use the formula, and we'll do another test. So in 3 months' time, he took another test. And I have the doctor's report. I have my file. And in the report, it said, it says, from Dr. Levasseur, I don't understand what she's using, but it obviously works. But I don't understand why the thyroid spiked the way it did. Meaning that they're now going to say, well, it was a fluke, that there really wasn't a problem with the thyroid. So that's the kind of result you get when you use any kind of natural approach. They'll say it was misdiagnosed or it wasn't really there. But that's my experience with everything, including the scar tissue. I used to do these kinds of meetings at the Bellagio. A friend of mine was the president, and he would give me comps to have lunch, and we worked into this big banquet type of table.
Oh, boy.
And they would be, at that time is when I first got my memory back. And I would take the records, and they would look through the records. One doctor down here would yell something, one doctor over here would yell, just to test and see if I could keep up with this conversation. And by the way, I had carpal tunnel in both hands. And they were going to do that surgery. I didn't even realize it when I was taking the Life Force and the Snurf. That all went away.
Oh, boy.
That all went away. And it took me probably 6 months before all the scar tissue was gone. And I hadn't even realized that was being corrected. Then that was with the oral chelation that I was taking because of my blood. They did blood tests, and it was just like bloppy, rusty mud. And they couldn't even get a syringe big enough. And a guy next to me, they were bleeding him because his blood looked just like mine. It was just too thick. And I thought, ooh, I'm in trouble. So again, I asked for the formula. He said oral chelation. I went back 30 days later, not even 30 days, 18 days later, because I fell at work. I was a supervisor in the casino, and I slipped on the wet pavement they have in the hallways for the employees. And they take you to the hospital, and they mandatorily check your blood to see if you're on drugs. And the nurse is in front of me, you know, with the needle, and I hear this psst, and she jumped back and almost hit me in the face. And I thought, oh, she's putting oxygen in my blood. And I asked her what she was doing, and she said, oh, don't worry, She said, I should be used to that, but I don't hear it very often, so it scared me. I said, well, what is it? And I said, can I see it? And she moved, and she said, it's oxygen in your blood. She said, you have so much oxygen that it made that sound. And I'm looking at this syringe. She didn't understand. I'm looking at this long syringe, and the blood is moving so fast in this syringe in 18 days that it's hitting the back and swirling like a wave. And it's got bubbles everywhere, and it's the color of a Dr. Pepper can. I mean, it was just blood. It was thin, it was healthy, in 18 days from using that formula. So a friend of mine in Dallas, Texas, was a surgeon, and he was working at Baylor. My cousins are doctors at Baylor, and he's a friend of theirs. And his mother was diagnosed with 90% blockage in her arteries, and so they had to do some surgery, the angioplasty stuff to get rid of that. And he said when he cut her open, he did a surgery. When he cut her open, he said it popped out, and she'd only been using it for a few days. And it just popped out like one of those sticks, he said, that men use to stop bleeding. It just came out. They didn't have to scrape the artery. It just came out. And that was just within a few days. So it's not just me that gets the results. And I can tell you it's not psychosomatic. There's a huge technology that is just becoming out front. It was back in the 50s, like chiropractors were considered quacks. My uncle, by the way, was the president of the Chiropractic Association in Texas. And he used to be ridiculed by my other cousins that are surgeons and doctors. And they would make fun of him because nobody believed that a chiropractor could make the difference. So that taught me, don't be afraid to speak out on something you know that works, because eventually other people will catch on.
You spoke about the scientist who developed these. Is he the only one, or are there other people? I've never heard of this, and I'm 81 years old. And you would have thought that somewhere in my life I would have been exposed to this.
That's exactly what I said when I was 38 and first heard about these. I certainly would have heard about it in my family, because we're nothing but doctors and nurses in my family. I would have heard about this stuff. It's got to be fake.
So
That's
who
my
else is
first
out there
idea.
with this scientist? Who else is out there?
There was a Dr. This scientist he actually used these formulas in the 70s in Washington, D.C. He worked with every doctor in the city. The results were so miraculous. I hate to use that word, but they were so miraculous that these doctors got together and they took him to court and sued him for practicing medicine without a license. That's what kind of results he was getting. And he spent millions fighting them to keep these formulas, and he won't, when the Youngs first started essential oils, they called me. They knew that I was speaking out about this. One of my friends that knew them really well and had them call me. And I thought it was fabulous because they wanted to put these in their essential oils. And the scientist, Stanley is his name, Stanley Moore, said, no, I can't make them biochemical. We did this before. There was another doctor, I think he's still out there, Mike, his first name, but he's out there. He does a blog and everything on Health Today. And he put the formulas Life Force, Nerve, and Oxygen into his herbal remedies. And people were getting pretty strong results. There was a lady on the Oprah Winfrey show, and when she did a special show on cancer and miraculous cures, that was the topic of her show, how I got rid of my cancer. One lady got up and talked about the subtle energy formula that she used that got rid of a rare spinal cancer, that she was cancer-free, and that's all she used. And I can tell you, since I added these to my daily routine, I've seen some pretty fabulous results. And we're going to talk more and answer some more questions that you might have. But give me a couple of minutes. We have to upload this video, and I'll come right back.